The Lake Mead National Recreation Area is a United States national recreational area located in southern Nevada, not far from the nearby city of Las Vegas. The Lake Mead National Recreation Area was the first federally protected region to receive the designation of a national recreational area and has remained the nation's largest national recreational area since it was designated as such in the year 1936. And spans an area of 1,496,806 acres. This expansive recreational area encompasses the entirety of its namesake, Lake Mead, which is a man-made reservoir lake that was first flooded in 1935 in order to power the massive Hoover Dam, which was completed in late September of 1935. The recreation area not only includes Lake Mead and the surrounding lands, but also another smaller Colorado River reservoir lake, Lake Mojave, and its surrounding lands as well. The park is a local hotspot for boating, swimming, and fishing, and also includes trails for hiking, sites for camping, and even ghost towns from a time before the basin of Lake Mead was filled. Furthermore, the park is also home to over 900 plant species and 500 animal species as well, with one species of rare frog, the relict leopard frog, being currently endemic to the area. The park is also unique in the fact that it encompasses a region that contains 3 of the 4 desert ecosystems found within the United States within it: the Mojave Desert, the Sonoran Desert, and the Great Basin Desert. Lake Mead itself, the primary attraction of the park, is a huge deep reservoir lake that can hold up to a max capacity of 30,167,000 acre-feet of water within it, which was last reached in the year 1983, and since, Lake Mead's waters have receded significantly from its maximum capacity. A very popular location for reprieve from the unrelenting Nevada sun, in the year 2012, Lake Mead was the 5th most visited U.S. national park, drawing in over 6.3 million visitors to the park that year. However, despite this, one lesser-known statistic about the park is that it is the deadliest national park in the nation, as it easily topped other frequently fatal and more popular national parks, such as the nearby Grand Canyon and Yosemite National Park, the latter of which has been the setting for several videos on the channel. Over the 7-year span of 2014 to 2021, the Lake Mead National Recreation Area would host a whopping 145 fatalities, most of which were drownings and homicides, and this number is a significant step up in the number of fatalities when compared to the aforementioned 3rd and 2nd place national parks, with the Grand Canyon hosting 100 deaths and Yosemite hosting 94 deaths over the same span of time. Drowning deaths are by far the most common cause of death in the Lake Mead National Recreation Area, as the deep waters of Lake Mead have claimed a great number of lives throughout the decades. One such death took place on July 29, 1986 in Powerline Cove in KATHERINES Landing. The victim in this incident was water skiing behind his boat while his daughter drove the watercraft, and at some point the victim let go of the tow line. His daughter turned the boat around to come back to pick him up, but unfortunately she made an error in navigating the boat and subsequently ran into the victim with the boat, and during the collision the man was struck in his buttocks by the engine's propeller. He soon fell unconscious and began to sink into the lake's deep waters. Authorities were contacted, and the victim was removed from the water and CPR was attempted until he could be transported to the hospital for medical treatment. Unfortunately, upon his arrival at the hospital, the man was declared dead as a result of an extended period of time spent underwater, as an autopsy later revealed. Just a few weeks later, on August 18, 1986, a highly intoxicated woman and her friend were returning from a party near KATHERINES Landing when the victim walked into Lake Mead. She was not able to swim, and thus, she soon began to drown. Fortunately, her friend was able to drag her out from the water before she was able to drown, but in a tragic turn of events, the woman would again walk into Lake Mead a second time, but this time, her friend didn't notice until it was too late, as he was unable to save her a second time before she sank beneath the surface of the lake. However, this incident would only be one of the drowning deaths that occurred on that very same day, as another man would also drown on August 18, 1986, in Lower Government Wash. The victim of this drowning incident was swimming in the lake when he became distressed and called out for help from his friends that were on shore nearby. In a cruel twist of fate, his friends assumed that he was joking about drowning and didn't realize that he was actually in need of assistance until he slipped beneath the surface of the water and never resurfaced. His body was found floating in the water later that day by fishermen, who reported their morbid discovery to authorities. Another rather mysterious drowning death occurred in the final days of the year 1996, when on December 29th, the wife of a local man reported him missing after he had not returned from a fishing trip after telling her he'd return after spending the night fishing. Security at the marina that he rented a parking slip for his boat at checked his slip and found his boat parked in it, with the radio still blaring and the keys to the dock's gates next to the man's boat. His body was later located on January 6, 1997, in 28-foot deep water near his parking slip. These are just a few examples of such drowning incidents, as there are simply far too many to cover in a single video. The Lake Mead National Recreation Area, due to its vast size, the lake's depth, the remote craggy terrain that surrounds it, and its proximity to the city of Las Vegas, Nevada, has made it a popular dumping ground for bodies of homicide victims, as well as a popular location for committing homicides as well. Much like with the drowning deaths, there are too many homicide-related deaths that have taken place at Lake Mead to cover in a single video. Perhaps, at least as of recently, the most well-known of these homicides is the body found in a barrel during the extreme drought and record low waters of 2022, one of several bodies discovered that year as a result of the worst drought in the region in 1,000 years, all of which I'll cover at the end of this video for the sake of cohesiveness. Anyways, the first documented homicide in Lake Mead's history took place on November 17, 1986. Although, let me just note, this is very unlikely to be the first homicide there, it's just the first documented one. At the Lake Mead boat launch ramp, Las Vegas police informed park officials of a possibly suicidal woman that had fled from them and managed to escape, and was likely on her way to the Lake Mead area along with her 7-year-old son, who she had threatened to kill along with herself. Later that day, marina workers that were maintaining the marina's docks found a submerged vehicle with the 7-year-old boy still inside the car. The woman was located nearby and admitted to drugging the boy with an overdose of sleeping pills, and subsequently drove the car into the water with the boy still inside. She was promptly arrested and charged with first-degree murder following her admittal to the crime. Less than a year later, 2 more homicide victims would be located within the park within a week of each other. The first set of remains was located at the Needle No. 1 Primitive Campground in Christmas Tree Pass. A camper notified officials when he spotted what appeared to be the remains of a human approximately 600 feet from the campground. When officials arrived, they found an extremely decomposed body belonging to a white male that was described as nearly skeletal, with injuries that suggested that the man had been murdered. However, due to the badly decomposed body, a positive identification of the man was not possible, and an estimation of the date of his death and the amount of time he had been in the location he was found at could not be determined. The next set of human remains was located a few days later on August 3, 1987, in the West End Wash. A hiker discovered a badly decomposed body while out exploring and immediately rushed to alert authorities. Upon their arrival, authorities were able to match the approximate time of death to a missing persons case that had been filed on July 23rd, a few weeks earlier, and the man was positively identified by family members. The victim's body was found decapitated, and thus his death was ruled a homicide by police. There are many other homicide incidents that have occurred over the years at Lake Mead. However, even the officials at Lake Mead are subject to arbitrary violence on occasion, such as in this next deadly incident. On May 13, 1989, park officials received a call from some fishermen about a swamp canoe in Devil's Cove. 2 park officials were sent to investigate, but were beaten to the task by 2 other fishermen who had immediately recognized the canoe as it belonged to a 33-year-old Texas native named David Noftser, who had been living in a shack he constructed in a small canyon in the park. David was known to park officials for his bizarre behavior, and they were first made aware of his presence there when they received a call from some campers that complained about loud chanting, and upon investigation, they found David chanting at an altar he had built. David had secured a backcountry camping permit and was warned by officials during this incident that once it had expired, he would be expected to leave. The 2 fishermen that beat the rangers there spotted David on the shore nearby and offered to take him with them to do some fishing, an offer which he accepted. However, strangely, David barely did any fishing, and instead spent most of his time aboard the craft sleeping in the bottom of the boat. However, when the man awoke from his slumber, he was irrational and irate, and pulled a rifle from his bag, which he held against the head of one of the fishermen. He then moved the barrel of the weapon slightly to the side and fired the gun, and began to angrily question the men about what they were doing there and their intentions. While the 2 fishermen were in the midst of their frightening interaction with David Noftser, the 2 dispatched rangers arrived on scene to investigate and were immediately drawn to the sound of the rifle shot. The 2 rangers approached the boat with their weapons drawn and ordered the boat to proceed to shore, and this order was complied with, and so the 2 park rangers holstered their weapons. As they neared the shore, the 2 fishermen aboard the boat with David suddenly leapt from the craft and into the water, and at this point, David brandished his rifle and a large hunting knife and threatened to kill the 2 rangers. The 2 rangers drew their weapons and attempted to convince David to put his weapon down unsuccessfully for over half an hour, at which point David jumped from the fisherman's craft to the operator's area near the stern of the ranger's craft, a 20-foot Boston Whaler, where he brandished his knife and shouted maniacally, quote, "I'll cut your guts out." One of the rangers who was the nearest to David grabbed the life ring aboard the boat in order to defend himself from David, and they both retreated towards the bow of the craft, and David began to pursue them towards the bow. At this point, fearing for his life, one of the rangers fired 4 shots at David, landing all 4 shots, and the second official, also fearing for his life, fired 2 shots at David, both of which hit their mark, and the shots sent David stumbling backwards into the seat of the boat. Despite being shot 6 times, David was not deterred and continued to approach the park rangers at the bow of the boat brandishing his knife, but then collapsed to the floor as he attempted this approach, and died before any emergency personnel managed to reach the scene. Both rangers were found to have been well within their rights to kill David, given the circumstances of the situation, and were not charged with any crime. Now that I've gone over some examples of deadly incidents that have occurred over the years at Lake Mead, Naturally, this leads us then to the several sets of human remains that were uncovered during the record drought in the year 2022. The first set of human remains uncovered by the drought is undoubtedly the most mysterious as well. On May 1st, 2022, near Hemingway Harbor, curious boaters would come across the first set of remains exposed by the drought when they discovered a rusty barrel protruding from the earth along the shoreline. Upon closer inspection of the barrel, the visitors were horrified to discover a human body still inside it, and immediately alerted authorities of their grisly discovery. Officials found that the man inside the barrel had died of a gunshot wound to the head and was found wearing clothes that were sold at the now nearly defunct superstore retailer Kmart in the late 1970s, and estimated that the man had been killed sometime in the late 1970s to the mid-1980s. During the approximate time of the man's death, the water where the body was found would be over 100 feet deep. Due to the victim's manner of death, officials determined that the man found inside the barrel was likely the victim of a mob hit, as the mafia were long rumored to have disposed of bodies in this manner, and the man's approximate date of death lined up perfectly with some of the most violent and tumultuous years during the time that several Italian mafia families operated and controlled the Las Vegas casinos from behind the scenes. As of the time of making this video, the victim found within the barrel has not been publicly officially identified, although there are 3 men that disappeared during the speculated time period of the murder that fit the description of the man's body in the barrel. The first suspected identity of the victim is a man named Jay Vandermark, a slot cheater who oversaw the slot operations for one of the mob-run casinos. The mafia had apparently wanted him dead after he had double-crossed them. The second suspected identity of the man was a man named William Crespo, who was a drug runner who was busted while in possession of a large amount of coke. Crespo quickly folded after the bust and became a snitch for the state, and thus the mafia had a huge target on his back. Finally, what many local experts consider the most likely identity of the body in the barrel was a man named Johnny Pappas, a Chicago area native that was a longtime casino boss for one of the local crime syndicate families. This is further evidenced by the fact that Johnny owned a boat he kept moored at Lake Mead, which would explain the location of his body a bit better than the former 2 identities, as dumping a body that was killed in Las Vegas in this manner would be more risky and less practical than dumping it at a site closer to the city. Furthermore, it is speculated, given the time frame of the victim's death and the manner in which he was killed, that famed hitman Tony Spilatro likely gave the order, or even killed the man in the can by his own hand. The second body discovered in Lake Mead as a result of the 2022 droughts was found just 6 days after the first, in Colville Bay on May 7th, 2022. 2 women were enjoying a day on the lake paddleboarding when they noticed what appeared to be a strange rock not far from them, protruding from the sand, so they decided to approach it. Upon further inspection, the strange rock was actually human remains, and authorities were contacted. The remains were later identified to be the remains of a 42-year-old man named Thomas Erndt. On August 2nd, 2002, Thomas, along with his wife and 2 kids, had been spending a day boating on Lake Mead. However, they then collectively decided to go for a swim off the side of the boat to escape the brutal summer sun. All 4 members of the family jumped in the water, but Thomas never resurfaced after he jumped in. The third body discovered as a result of the drought of 2022 was discovered on July 25th, 2022, near Boulder Beach. The badly decomposed remains were discovered by a man named Jesus Catalan, who recorded his discovery on camera. Unfortunately, there is no way that the rather grisly footage of his discovery of what he believed to be the badly decomposed torso of a woman would fly under YouTube's draconian terms of service, so if you're interested in seeing it, you'll have to seek the video out for yourself. The footage depicts Jesus approaching the torso and examining it excitedly up close, even touching it a few times with his fingers and removing some water weeds from one of the corpse's leg sockets, and some of the victim's bones can be seen beneath the decomposed torso's remaining structure. However, the torso was later positively identified as the remains of a 52-year-old man named Claude Pensinger, who disappeared in July of 1998. There were further human remains located in the area where Claude's torso was found on August 6th and 16th, 2022, which were later confirmed to, at least partially, belong to Claude as well. However, the latter discovery was notably not only Claude's remains, as a partial skeletal torso was also extracted from the site, and as of the making of this video, those further human remains have yet to be officially identified. Finally, the last set of human remains discovered due to the drought was discovered on October 17th, 2022. Just before noon, authorities received a call about the discovery of partial human remains near Colville Bay, which was scoured by the police's dive team, where they located more human remains. The remains were later confirmed to belong to a 39-year-old resident of North Las Vegas named Donald Smith, who had disappeared while swimming in the waters of the Colorado River, just behind the reservoir wall of Hoover Dam in April of 1974. He was assumed to have drowned. Real quick, I just wanted to say that the release date of this video is exactly 1 year from the day that I hit 1,000 subscribers on the channel, and this date was simultaneously the start of the year-long snowball of the channel's growth, and I can scarcely believe that it has even grown so much further since then. I can't fully express how grateful I am to all of you who have subscribed and watched my videos. You all have made a huge positive impact on my life, and I cannot thank you all enough. I love making content for you guys, and there will be a whole lot more of it to come in the future. I'm certainly not going anywhere, hopefully. Thank you all for watching.